The perfect wall. Detroit, Michigan. Another abandoned construction site in a city full of them. Or at least that's what everyone thinks about the Morrison Tower. 40 stories of perfect brickwork reaching into the gray Michigan sky. Perfect, unfinished, and untouched for 15 years. Mike Chen, fresh out of construction school in California, didn't know about its history when he took the job with Davidson Construction. 6 figures for 6 months of work seemed too good to be true. Now, standing in front of the tower at 6 a.m. on a cold October morning, he understood why. "Listen up, newbie," said Frank, the site manager, his breath visible in the cold air. "Before you sign anything, there's something you need to know about this place." They sat in the site office, a trailer that had seen better days. Frank poured coffee from a thermos that looked as old as the building itself. 15 years ago, this was supposed to be the crown jewel of the city's revival. The architect was Robert Morrison himself, you know, the guy who designed half of Chicago's skyline. But the real genius behind it was the site manager, William Peterson. Frank pulled out an old photograph. A tall, thin man in an immaculate white shirt stood against the backdrop of the rising tower, holding a level in his hands like a scepter. Peterson was different. Ex-military engineer. Precision was his religion. He measured everything to the 100th of an inch, had his own tools custom-made in Switzerland, wouldn't let anyone touch them. Mike sipped his coffee, trying not to show his skepticism. Another construction ghost story. Every site had one. Then the recession hit. Budget cuts, cheaper materials. The company wanted to cut corners. Peterson, he didn't take it well. Frank's hands trembled slightly as he lit a cigarette. First it was just complaints, then warnings, then workers started disappearing. Jones from the third-floor crew, Martinez from electrical, Thompson from masonry, 5 guys in total. Police found nothing. But the work kept getting done. Perfect walls appearing overnight. Flawless brickwork where there should have been nothing. "What happened to Peterson?" Mike asked, despite himself. "Found his tools one morning, laid out in perfect geometric patterns on the 40th floor, along with his white shirt, folded with military precision. No blood, no signs of struggle, just gone." Frank stood up and walked to the window, looking at the tower. "They sealed the investigation, blamed it on industrial accidents. Construction stopped, but every company that tried to restart it, well, let's just say their work wasn't up to Peterson's standards." Mike laughed nervously. "Come on, Frank. This is 2024. You're telling me ghost stories?" Frank didn't smile. "Check your phone." Mike pulled out his iPhone. No signal. "Never works near the building," Frank said. "Neither do laser levels or digital measuring tools. Peterson only trusted the old ways, and he still does." "You're serious about this?" Frank handed him a contract. "Pays good because no one lasts here. Last crew quit after finding their week's work demolished overnight. Every brick removed, stacked in perfect rows. With a note in perfectly straight handwriting, substandard work will not be tolerated." Mike signed anyway. 6 figures were 6 figures. The first week was normal, almost boring. Mike worked on the 38th floor, finishing interior walls. His work was good. He'd graduated top of his class. Then the notes started appearing. 2.3 millimeter deviation in vertical alignment. Unacceptable. Mortar mixture inconsistent. Correct immediately. Reference section 5.2 of 1985 masonry standards. The handwriting was eerily straight, like it had been done with a ruler. In red pencil that wouldn't erase. His tools started moving at night. Every morning he'd find them arranged in perfect parallel lines. His level, which he'd certified as accurate just before the job, kept showing mysterious discrepancies. Then he met Sarah from the night shift. Young, smart, with a degree in architectural engineering. She didn't believe the stories either. "Peterson's probably living in Florida, laughing at all of us," she said during their lunch break. "I'll prove it's just someone messing with us." She set up a camera that night. Time-lapse, battery-powered, independent of the building's weird electrical issues. The next morning, they found the camera, or rather, pieces of it, laid out in precise 1-inch intervals across the floor. Next to it was a sheet of paper with architectural drawings, showing exactly how a proper security system should be installed. The measurements were in hundredths of an inch. Sarah quit that afternoon. Mike stayed. The pay was still good, and he'd started to become interested. He found himself measuring things twice, 3 times, checking his lines with obsessive care. The notes became less frequent. One night, working late, he heard footsteps above him. Perfect rhythm, like a metronome. Click, click, click. Hello? His voice echoed through the empty floor. No answer, just the sound of a level being placed against a wall. He walked up to the 39th floor, empty, except for a single light burning in the distance. As he approached, he saw a man in a white shirt measuring a wall. "Mr. Peterson?" The man turned. His face was angular, precise. His eyes were like laser levels, measuring, judging. "Your work shows promise," Peterson said, his voice as straight and unwavering as his lines. "But there's room for improvement." He held out a level. Not just any level. A custom-made precision tool that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Would you like to learn?" Mike should have run. Should have quit like Sarah. Instead, he found himself reaching for the tool. "The building must be perfect," Peterson said. "Nothing less is acceptable." The next morning, Frank arrived to find the 38th floor completely redone. Every brick, every line, every angle was perfect. Beyond perfect. The kind of work that shouldn't be possible. He found Mike's tools arranged in a precise geometric pattern. His boots, cleaned and polished, placed exactly 12 inches apart, and his smartphone dissected into exactly equal parts, arranged in a perfect circle. On the wall was a note in 2 different handwritings, one angular and precise, the other becoming eerily similar. "Standards must be maintained. We will accept nothing less." They never found Mike, but sometimes on cold nights workers see 2 figures on the upper floors. One tall, one shorter, both carrying levels like scepters. And the walls of Morrison Tower keep growing, brick by perfect brick. The building's still unfinished. Davidson Construction is hiring again. 6 figures, 6 months. The ad specifically requests attention to detail. Frank says they've already found a promising candidate, young guy from Ohio, good credentials. He just needs to learn the importance of perfect measurements. After all, as the new note on the 40th floor reads, the work must continue. Standards must be maintained. And somewhere in the tower, 2 levels tap against the walls, measuring, judging, waiting for the next apprentice who dreams of achieving perfection. Perfection has a price. In Detroit, it's measured in disappeared workers and flawless brickwork, reaching ever higher into the gray Michigan sky.